Alright, so I do plan on playing... I want to play like an RPG, like an action adventure or something. I'll probably do that tomorrow in real time, but next week in your time. Just because I played Guppy and Line. I'm just in the mood for something a little less action-oriented. And another one coming up somewhat soon on my list of games in Itch.io's Racial Justice and Equality Bundle, which was released in June 2020. Games that this channel focuses on for the foreseeable future. This is one of them. It is a visual novel. It is called The Whisperer in Darkness. It is based on... Well, I'll just read the description. The Whisperer in Darkness is a visual novel based on the cosmic horror story by H.P. Lovecraft. Play as Alex in Wilmarth, skeptic and professor at Miskatonic University, as you unravel the hideous secrets centered at a secluded farm in the hills of Vermont, coming ever closer to mortal peril. That's the description of the game. There's a little bit more. I'm not going to read it. You can if you want to. I don't know how bad my resolution is downscaled, so I don't know if you'll be able to, based on what you're seeing on the screen. I'm aware of H.P. Lovecraft's racism. I'm sure that I would assume that the person who made this game, Nat Quayle Nelson, also is as well. They also donated their game for a charitable cause. So, also H Bomber Guy has a really great video on H.P. Lovecraft's racism, general bigotry, and how that all ties to, I don't know, just the modern cultural reconciliation of still finding value or enjoying his writing. But anyway, it's based on that, so we're going to play through it. There is a note here. The Whisperer in Darkness is a short, focused experience which takes under an hour for a full playthrough. The story has no branching choices and only one ending, so it's more of a kinetic novel. If you enjoy it, you can always just purchase it from them. You don't have to play it. I'm trying to think about how to play through this game without, because I want to be respectful. Do I want to put the whole thing if you're going to roughly get the same thing just by watching this video? I don't know. Maybe I will just cut out the ending. I'm undecided at this moment in time. Alright, so let's get into it. Options. We have music. Wonderful. Graphic scale. Oh geez. Yeah, I want it to be full. Dialogue speed normal. Any key to continue. Okay. Up, down, left, right. Okay. Start with chapter 1. Headphones are highly recommended. Luckily I am wearing them. Maybe you are too. Maybe you aren't. To continue the story, press any key. Left click. To pause at any time, escape or right click. Okay. Chapter 1. The Journal of Alex in Wilmarth. Miss Ackley, to begin with, I must apologize most profoundly for my failure in the end. Though there remains nothing in my power that could help you, I still write to console you of your loss and to caution you after the last wishes of your father. You may choose not to believe my story, although comprehensive record of my correspondence with Henry Ackley is preserved in the storage drive I sent you along with my first rushed letter. The police found no more evidence to corroborate my final report than the bullet holes in the Ackley farmhouse. Nothing remained to suggest that anyone had ever been there other than the missing Ackley himself. You might think it was simply a nightmare that led me to flee the farmhouse that night, recklessly driving a stolen Ford through the wild hills of Vermont. I can only testify as to the vividness of the things I saw and heard, and relate in utmost detail the things that occurred in the farmhouse. Credulous of my tale or not, I must beg you to abandon any foolish notion of returning to those God-forsaken hills. I write to you here on paper because I have no faith in the safe transmission of any sensitive digital communication. Although I am in part to blame for your father's dreadful fate, I ask also that you do not attempt further contact with me. I aim now to quit my entanglement in all this and to live the remainder of my life in the fragile peace of hiding. The matter came to my attention several weeks ago because of the recent flash floods in Vermont. An eccentric poor woman camping in Townsend State Forest reported strange bodies washed up one morning on the shore of the Rest River above Newfane. Among other rumors, this testimony sparked a surge of theories. Myths and legends began to resurface from decades past. Some of the more seemingly well-researched claims actually found print, sparking popular discussion and debate. The Rutland Herald. Elsa Davenport. Bizarre tales of elder race may carry some truth. Vermont folklore for centuries has hinted at the existence of a hidden race of monstrous beings somewhere among its most remote hills. Talk of these creatures has since resurfaced after evidence of their presence was reported by Vermont locals, venturing deeper than usual in the mountains. They claimed to have seen prints in mud, each report describing the very same claw-like outline belonging to no known animal inhabitant of Vermont wilderness. Curiously arranged stone circles where the grass was worn away, as if the site of some druidic ritual, cave mouths closed by boulders in seemingly deliberate fashion, even large, dim figures taking flight under moonless skies. These claims might easily be dismissed as lunatic fantasy, were the stray accounts not to fall in such perfect agreement with one another. With these reports coinciding with claims of alien bodies found on riverbeds, it can hardly be denied that something strange is at work in the hills of Vermont. Most surprising about these stories is their apparent connection with largely forgotten mythology. Both point to creatures taking the shape of a huge crab with too many legs and great bat-like wings. Could these reports be describing the old ones of legend? As an academic and folklorist, I was already well aware of the legends, and my opinions on the subject became increasingly sought after by my students. From my studies, I devised that Davenport's connection between recent events and largely forgotten mythology was entirely fraudulent, though more recent folk tales of New Hampshire overflowed with reference to the Mi-Go, or Winged Ones. Said to come from the sky, they had mines in certain earthly hills where they gathered a kind of stone unique to Earth and flew back to their own stars. They were mostly content to leave humans alone, but sometimes people disappeared among their hills. Their hills in the deep woods of the highest peaks, in the dark valleys where streams trickle from unknown sources. Their hills where animals once dwelled, and now silent, for all intelligent life had either fled or vanished. Their hills where, in the dead of night, sometimes strange buzzing voices could be heard in conversation, seemingly imitating human speech. None of it was to be believed, of course. Chapter 2. Eventually, I decided to take my expertise in rational skepticism to the papers to see if I could quell the nonsense once and for all. I wish I never had. The Brattleboro Reformer, Alex Wilmarth, Facts Against the Migo Legend. Lately, particular public attention has been given to tales of strange events surrounding the hills of Vermont. As an assistant professor of the renowned Miskatonic University and a scholar of folklore, I intend to inform you of the purely irrational origin of these stories, and to dispel fully the irrational fear of these hills. The common name now applied to the aliens supposedly lurking in Vermont is the Old Ones. Claimed sightings of such otherworldly beings are not, in fact, a recent phenomenon to this region. Early Puritans feared beasts of the devil they glimpsed through the thick woods at night. We now know this fear is a mere function of societal ostracism, whereby Orthodox leaders eliminated dissent from their more subversive opponents, calling certain people devil worshippers and expelling them from their communities. Yet more troublingly, strange writings of elaborate hoax from as late as the 1930s paint similar invading creatures as heralding the end of human civilization, a hate-fueled metaphor for natives, fear of growing immigrant populations. These weird tales, mistakenly believed by a startling number of impressionable readers, embraced a subtle undercurrent of racial supremacy which perseveres to this day. Comparison between the old myths and the recent tales reveals undeniably close similarity between the two. The only rational conclusion is that the recent hysteria is a mere outgrowth of historically entrenched oppression and racism, to which there is not a grain of truth. This is an interesting turn. They have taken the inspiration from H.P. Lovecraft's writing and sort of the implications of his writing. If you're familiar with H.P. Lovecraft's themes, recurring themes, tends to be fear of the other a lot. It's interesting to see that this is not just a retelling of H.P. Lovecraft. It is repurposing H.P. Lovecraft while also commenting on what he is so infamous for. His fear of his sort of just like racial ignorance, to the point where he perpetrated some dangerous stereotypes in his writing. I like that. Akalei's first message came in an email one morning. Hold down the direction keys to explore. Oh, there we are. I think that's my laptop. Can I look at my books, though? I paused to peruse my modest literary collection before conducting my daily activities. Recollecting the grotesque horror of my favorite works, I chuckled to myself. The newly risen legends could have fit nicely among them. I suppressed a shudder as my gaze passed over one dreaded volume, the infamous Neonomicon of Alan Moore, with its horrifying illustrations by Jason Burroughs. I am fairly certain that's a real book. Is there anything else in this bookcase? I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison. It didn't say by Harlan Ellison, but it's by Harlan Ellison. Saga of the Swamp Thing, Book 3, which I think is either Neil Gaiman or Alan Moore. Isaac Asimov, Not Final. Me and this person have very similar tastes in literature. A Tale of Ancient Gods Long Unnoticed Among Oblivious Human Fools, From Around Here by Tim Pratt. I've never heard of this one. I want to look at what else is in the bedroom. I wasn't aware there was going to be dialogue prompts by exploring. Nothing in the bedroom. Let's see by the window. So nothing, I just have to check the email. Email from hwaccolay@gmail.com. So already right away, from the reference of digital, just the use of the term digital in the chapter 1, and now that we're checking an email, this is not a retelling of an H.P. Lovecraft in visual novel form. This is a repurposing and their own take on it. I'm pleasantly surprised. I really thought that it was just going to be like H.P. Lovecraft in the form of a visual novel, but it's inspired by, not an arrangement of, which is cool. Professor Wilmarth, I have read your summaries of Vermont folklore in The Reformer and was impressed by the depth of your research. As a student of anthropology and folklore similar to yourself, it is easy to see why you choose to dismiss these supernatural tales. Many a scientist would connect them with silly legends and think no more on it, as I myself was originally inclined to. Unfortunately, for reasons I will explain, I'm afraid your opponents, ignorant as they are, may be closer to the truth. I have lived my entire life in the midst of the dreaded hills and forests. Following the latest reports, I explored deeper into the uninhabited hills and valleys, expecting to confirm their falsehood. I have come to regret my curiosity, for I now have certain unsettling evidence to the opposite effect. Indeed, as a man of science, I must now acknowledge that something strange is happening here. I do not intend in writing to you to spark any argument. My real wish is that you will hush the matter to the best of your ability. Nothing good may come of further drawing the public's attention to this place. Please share this message with no one. If you wish to see the evidence I have collected, I will send it to you as soon as I can. I have taken several photographs of things I discovered in the woods. Yours, Henry Accolay. My reply was short, no more than a paragraph. I requested he send me his, quote, evidence, from a kind of humorous curiosity. I would certainly be interested in seeing your photographs. Rest assured, I do not intend to further involve myself in any public debate over the matter. Sent. He sent the photos the next day. One night while I wandered in the woods, I heard the sound of distant ritual chanting. I followed the noise close enough to realize it would be foolish to come any closer to it. I set out the next morning to return to that spot, where I found this stone circle. I don't know what to make of it. This is one of the prints you can make out around the circle in the other photo. You might suspect this mark to be a fake, created by some jokester to stoke my growing unease, but remember that from the many years I've lived here, my intuition for the traces left by natural wildlife is quite refined. I am confident this print is neither artificial nor belonging to any native animal. At the same spot, I found this strange black stone. I've been working to decipher the hieroglyphics for almost a week. Despite my anthropological background, I cannot identify their language as any human tongue. The last photo was of Accolay himself, standing alone in front of the farmhouse. After viewing the pictures one by one, alongside Accolay's measured contemplation, I couldn't help but begin to entertain the notion that something truly unusual was taking place near the Accolay farmhouse. Though nothing so supernatural as he seemed to imply. Still, I never wrote to the papers again. Slowly the debates died off. Chapter 3. Something in the way Akale presented his discoveries and theories thereof prompted me to continue our discussion despite my initial doubts. Despite my measured trust for him, I contacted his old professors to verify that he was indeed the mature scholar he claimed, thus dispelling my suspicion of his messages as part of an elaborate farce. This, and the clear rationality which characterized his early correspondence, prevented me from discounting his experiences. In addition to the Black Stone, Akale had one more tangible piece of evidence. He actually managed to record a minute or two of what he had described as ritual chanting, which he heard one night in the woods. He sent me the audio file at my eager persuasion. You may have heard it yourself if you've yet delved into the accursed hard drive containing every communication which ever passed between us. Upon first listening, my heart was struck cold. I began to truly believe the wider claims Akale put forth. His careful distance from the speakers was evident in the way their voices carried through the trees, no louder than whispers. Still, I will never forget the few words I could hear above all the rest. Is the Lord of the Woods even to from the wells of the night to the gulfs of space, and from the gulfs of space to the wells of night, ever the praises of great Cthulhu. And it has come to pass that the Lord of the Woods, being seven and nine down the uneven steps, tributes to him in the gulf, as a thought, he of whom thou hast taught us marvels. On the wings of night, out beyond space, out beyond. Go out among humans and find the ways thereof, that he in the gulf may know. Await Nyarlathotep, he, the great messenger. Down from the world of seven suns to Ma. And he shall put on the semblance of them, the masking flesh, and the robe that hides. Next was the matter of the Black Stone. Akale claimed to have found it in the woods on Round Hill. Its unknown hieroglyphics nearly worn away, perhaps from centuries of age, or even millennia. He soon began to display a certain paranoia over the stone's discovery. Once he took it home, he claimed that everything changed, that he might be killed or taken should they decide his curiosity had overreached. After puzzling over the stone's symbols for weeks, Akale believed he was on the cusp of unraveling its secrets. We agreed that if he could send it to me safely, I might be able to find the last crucial piece needed to translate the glyphs. I managed to convince him to drive into Townsend, Townsend, that's how you say that, right? Townsend, and ship the stone from there. Its estimated date of arrival came and went, and to my dismay, I received no delivery. Distraught, Acolyte concluded the stone must have been intercepted. Now they must be watching him more closely than ever, he realized. I reassured him that it must simply have been an accident, and promptly conducted my own investigation into the status of the delivery. I'm tracking the delivery ID, number, security code. Submit. Loading. An error occurred. Package 04510801 does not exist. The results were unhelpful. Despite my half-hearted encouragements, Acolyte soon abandoned hope that the stone would ever be recovered. Chapter 4. At this point, Acolyte's emails began to arrive with greater frequency, and describing still more startling events at the farmhouse. Email from hwacolyte@gmail.com. The unknown things have begun to close in on me with a frightening new degree of determination. I suspect they mean to kill me because of our correspondence and because I've learned too much. I never should have sent you that recording or the Black Stone. They may now be watching you as well. Be vigilant. I have long known they keep human allies to act as agents and spies. You yourself heard the human voices in my recording that night. Now, I believe I have identified one of their human agents, Walter Brown, a surly farmer who lives alone on a rundown hillside place near the deep woods. I have heard his voice in terrible conversations in the woods. I have also seen claw prints near his house. I have never encountered a hint of their presence on nights when the moon is full and bright, for these creatures shun the light. The nocturnal barking of my dogs has grown hideous on moonless nights. Yesterday, on my way to the village by car, I was stopped by a tree trunk laid in my path at a deep patch of the woods. Luckily, I had 2 of my great dogs with me, whose savage barking warned me of the things which must have been lurking near. I never leave home without my dogs now. Who knows what would have happened if I had been alone? The next email came in the evening, and I judged it was written in a hurry. Frightful happenings last night. Bullets flying outside the farmhouse while my dogs ran frenzied from the barn to find the source of the noise. A few quickly returned to shelter, while the rest went chasing after the threat. Found 3 of those 12 dogs dead this morning. Myriads of claw prints in the road. Human prints also, probably Walter Brown's. Wire went dead as I phoned Brattleboro for more dogs. Later went by car, bought 4 new guard dogs and several cases of rifle ammo. Phone company found the cable cleanly cut at a point where it crossed the deserted hills north of Newfane. I'm replying to H.W. Acolyte now. This is terribly frightening news. Surely you must inform the authorities. Maybe if we can get them to believe your story, they could be of help. I know you've warned me to stay away, but maybe I could visit to help you explain your situation to the police. My corroboration might lend credence to your situation. Email from H.W. Acolyte. Despite all our evidence, the police will never believe any of this, and if they did, a good armed force could wipe out the mining colony these beings have created. That is what the Migo are afraid of. but more would return from their planet. And though their armies have never bothered to conquer Earth, it is only because they have not needed to. I appreciate the offer, but there's nothing you can do. It would only hurt both of us. We're replying now. Are you sure? Still, you could flee elsewhere. Do you have any family or a place you could stay in the meantime? You may be better off leaving Vermont entirely, I'm afraid. Sent. Responded back. I was bewildered by your last message until I checked the history of our conversation. I never sent the last email you received, nor did I ever receive your previous offer of help. Things are much worse than we thought. If they've successfully altered our communications, I've changed my password, and you should do the same. I have a daughter in California. I'm arranging to go live with her, but I've lived in this house my entire life. Maybe if I can prove to the aliens that I mean them no harm, and will explore no further, the situation will improve. Replying to H.W. Ackley. This is certainly a distressing development. I changed my password and found no evidence of any tampering with my emails. Let me know if anything else happens. I will help you in any way I can. The next 3 messages came in quick succession, each arriving the morning after the last. Email from hwackley@gmail.com. Bad news. Last night was thickly cloudy. Though no rain, and not a bit of moonlight got through. Things were pretty bad, and I think the end is getting near in spite of our hopes. After midnight they started to arrive. One of the winged things must have flown to the roof, for I heard a terrible scratching from above as it landed, and a thump as one of the dogs rolled across there, nearly falling off the edge. I think it caught the monster by its leg as it took flight. There was a terrible fight up there, punctuated by a frightful buzzing. A death shriek? Then there came a putrid smell. Right then, bullets shattered the window and nearly grazed me. I put out the light and fired out the windows, raking all around the house with rifle fire aimed high enough to miss the dogs. Everything died down after that, but what I found in the morning was terrible. Pools of blood were left in the yard, beside pools of a green, sticky substance that smelled positively foul. I climbed on the roof and found more of the sticky stuff there. I still don't know what was up there. 5 of the dogs were killed. One of them was shot in the back. I'm afraid I hit it by aiming too low. Now I'm replacing the panes the shots broke, and I'm off to Brattleboro for more dogs. Surely the volunteers at the kennels think I've become unhinged. I think I'll be ready to move in a week or 2, but it kills me to think of it. So I think that this is actually H.W. Ackley. I think this is actually Ackley, and the other one saying that we have no memory of it. I think that's the bullshit one. Clouds didn't break, so no moon again. It's waning, anyway. I'd put in a damn searchlight if I didn't know they'd cut the cables as fast as they could be repaired again. I must be losing my mind. They talked to me last night in their cursed buzzing voices. I cannot repeat the hideous things they told me over the barking of the dogs. Stay out of this, Wilmarth. It is worse than we ever suspected. They don't mean to let me leave Vermont. They wish to take me alive, away outside the galaxy. I told them I wouldn't go where they wish, or in the terrible way they wish to take me. But I fear it will be no use. 6 more dogs killed, and I felt presences all along the wooded parts of the road when I drove to Brattleboro today. It is horrible. The last email instilled in my chest a frigid hopelessness, so fraught with anxiety that I could not respond. No use in discussing anything anymore. I am fully resigned. I have only enough willpower left to fight them off. Can't escape even if I were willing to leave everything and run. They'll get me. Had a letter from them yesterday posted up on my front door. Walter Brown must have left it. The creatures couldn't have gotten so close with the dogs about. It tells what they want to do with me. I shudder to imagine it. Still cloudy nights and the moon waning. I wish I dared to get help, but no one will believe me. And I'm too far out of touch. I have been for years. The worst part is, I have seen and touched one of the things. God, it was awful. Dead, of course. One of the dogs had it. I found it near the barn this morning. I tried to take a photo, but the areas of the Migo's skin seems to have reflected the light from my camera so strongly that my image reflected only darkness, penetrated by a sinister constellation of stars and streaming lights. Just as I took my first photo, the body began to disintegrate so rapidly that the only photos I could take thereafter showed nothing but the dirt and an abundance of the same green fluid I'd seen before. You know, those things in the rivers were only ever seen on the first morning after the flood, and explorers who saw figures in the woods always claimed it was difficult or impossible to take good pictures of them. It all makes sense now, how these things have stayed secret for so long. This may be goodbye. If it is, please write my daughter, Grace Goodenough Accolay. I fear to write her address here, lest they find her too. I've sent a letter containing her information. I pray to God it does not meet the same fate as the Black Stone. Write the girl if you don't hear from me in a week, and watch the papers for news. But don't come up here. I'm going to play my last 2 cards now, if I have the courage to. First, I will try poison gas on the things. I've got the chemicals and I've made masks for myself and the dogs. If that doesn't work, I will call the police. They may put me in a mental ward, but it will be better than what the other creatures will do. I wish I hadn't become such a hermit. Folks don't drop around as they used to. Write my daughter if you don't hear soon. Don't mix up in this. 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 Chapter 5. 2 days after reading Accolay's frantic last email, I received another one, which was altogether shocking in its reversal of the sentiments which had characterized each of Accolay's past communications. Can we look out our window? Does our bookcase say something different? After the past week's events and their terrible culmination, I'd lost my amusement with the literary macabre. Can we look out the window? The sound design is excellent. I just find this to be a very... just an excellent visual novel presentation. I really enjoy this. Also, by presenting it, sorry, my eyes are drying out from keeping them open too much. Putting this in like an ASCII art style also kind of implies a modernization of H.P. Lovecraft's themes and messages, which is really cool. And just like right out of the gate, showing from the store page to now, just this story, showing a deep respect for the roots, the foundation that H.P. Lovecraft laid out, but while also recognizing who he was and what he believed very publicly, and building upon it something new and really great, and then to donate that to Ichio's Racial Justice and Equality Bundle. Good on ya. I like it. All right, so let's read. Email from H.W. Accolade. Wilmarth, I must confess that I was entirely mistaken in my silly estimation. I almost said estimation, but I'm going to pause here. Notice how suddenly we're speaking in less frantic sentences. So this is obviously not Accolade. You don't need me to tell you that, though. That's probably pretty predictable. I must confess that I was entirely mistaken in my silly estimation of the Migo as our enemies. So much has changed in the last 2 days. We were correct in our speculations of the creature's existence and identity, but in believing they were malicious, we could not have been further from the truth. I already told you the aliens had attempted to communicate with me. Last night, I finally listened to what they had to say, and allowed a human messenger of theirs to enter my home and explain their true intentions. Everything humans have ever conjectured of these things, from my own previous theories to the old cycles of folklore, has been far off the mark. There's interesting punctuation happening here. Like, off is capitalized, but then hour, the hour in the next sentence is not capitalized. Our cultural and psychological constraints make us humans simply unable to grasp the full force of their capitalized thought processes unaided. What I thought, all capitalized. So it's interesting that this game so far has been, because I assume that this person is, the person writing this is also the game creator, has a strong sense of the use of grammar, punctuation, like it's all very correct. This is not a mistake. I don't believe that these are mistakes or an oversight. It's just an interesting thing that's happening. What I thought was morbid and evil, as in reality, fantastic, mind-expanding, and even glorious, bringing to me a spiritual sensation which previously we might have mocked, like any naked delusion of human religious faith. It is simply the human tendency, a silly evolutionary feature having yet to be discarded, to shun the new and the different. Now I regret harming them so needlessly with my rifle fire. Is that really what Accolade would say? To harm them with my rifle fire? If only I had listened to them from the beginning instead of initiating violence. But, thankfully, they bear me no grudge over their fallen. They feel no such emotions as spite, malice, or revenge. In fact, the Migo have never willfully harmed any peaceful human. As I have learned, they are actually unjustly targeted by a cruel cult of humans who hunt and kill them on behalf of monstrous powers from other dimensions. It was these, the true villains, who stole the Black Stone and interfered with our communication in order to foment our fear of the Migo. Were we to have revealed their colony to this cult or to other humans, the outcome would have been catastrophic. It was only knowing the damage this cult might have caused that the Migo chose to sacrifice themselves, and regrettably, those of my dogs which were killed, in order to achieve communication with me and avoid a greater harm to humanity and to Earth at large. In reality, the Migo want closer intellectual ties with humanity. They have so much to teach us, and to learn from us. To this end, they have chosen me, to be their primary human interpreter. You may think me mad, but I wish to share with you the magnitude of the opportunity with which I am presented. I have already learned much of the Migo race and their alien culture. They communicate telepathically with one another, but through a routine surgery they are able to synthesize human speech, such as you have heard. They have mastered the discipline of surgery. Their science is far more advanced than ours, Wilmarth. They have answered many of my confusions concerning their anatomical composition. Their bodies are composed of a fungoid material not found on Earth, and their command of nanotechnology, still unknown to our race, allows them to shield themselves from most techniques of human photography, and to destroy their own bodies at a whim, should the risk of capture arise. I have mentioned that these beings communicate with one another through a form of telepathy. Yet this crude supernatural delegation does no justice to their ingenious methods of conversation. They confer amongst themselves through the transmission of targeted electromagnetic waves human science would refer to as ultraviolet light. The alien sense organs must perceive in these telepathic waves immeasurably precise variance in frequency, which, to the alien mind, conveys conceptual information in such complex syntax as to express ideas, feelings, and concepts far beyond the scope of human imagination. It does not suffice to refer to it as merely language. It is for this reason that the creatures loathe sunlight, which to their senses is an overwhelming crash of static, making speech impossible. It is unbelievable. Everything I have learned from them. There is so much more to tell, but it cannot be written in its entirety. You must come visit me as soon as possible, so we may discuss these incredible things in person. My house is no longer besieged. I have no more need of the dogs. It is entirely safe here now, and I take pleasure in rescinding my earlier warnings and extending to you my earnest invitation. I wish so badly to share this joy of discovery with you. You need not tell anyone about this. These matters are far too important to share with prying ears. Bring your laptop and the history of our communications, as much as you still have. We will need all of it to retrace our steps and put right the many miscommunications we formed regarding my new acquaintances. You can take the train to Brattleboro. They didn't capitalize that. Brattleboro. I will meet you at the station whenever you find convenient. It's almost like they don't know that you should capitalize it. They don't know what is a proper term. We can drive back to the farmhouse together. Prepare yourself to stay as long as possible, and for long nights of enlightening conversation. P.S. They have given me an incredible new device, which you will be amazed to see. I was at first consumed with suspicion, convinced this message had not in fact been written by Henry Accolay, who had never been so careless with his capitalization as this message demonstrated. Were the implications of my conclusion not so horrific, I might have laughed at the obviousness of the ruse. Yet many questions remained unanswered. Did the fantastically intelligent Migo expect me to believe such a trick? And if they did, why should they expose such details of their own anatomical composition and technology? Furthermore, Accolay had mentioned they meant to capture him alive. Reading and rereading the text, I came to feel a glimmer of hope that my friend still survived. Suddenly, I noticed a pattern in what appeared to be the mistakes in Accolay's typing. Oh, Jesus, I didn't even think of that. A secret message. Jesus Christ. Days, our night, off their thought. Reality unjustly stole. Their primary light, express as static entirety, house ears long. P.S. Putting the mistakes together, it was as if he were saying, "Do not trust. Please help." Chapter 6. Do not trust, please help. I began to tremble with horror at the realization that Akale must have hidden this message against the will of his alien captors. Once I recovered my wits, to the furthest extent possible under such emotional strain, I knew I should alert one more soul, at least, to my plans. Realizing no others could reliably believe my story, I retrieved Akale's envelope containing your address and sent you my first rushed letter. So Alex Wilmarth sent this letter to Grace Akale in California. With it, I sent the spare storage drive containing the entirety of Akale's and my correspondence to that point. Hopefully you received it intact and have thoroughly inspected its contents. All other precautions taken care of, I replied to him that afternoon and began to make my travel arrangements. I set out 3 days later, taking my laptop and a suitcase of simple necessities. I told no one else of my departure. When I disembarked the train in Vermont, I was finally struck by the great distance I had traveled from home. Coming out to the street, I scanned the line of cars, looking for the Akale Ford, but before I could pick it out, I was approached by a stranger. Oh. What was on his face? Alex Wilmarth? Sorry for any confusion. I'm Walter Brown. I've come to take you back to the farm. Inwardly, I reeled in shock, first at the disfigurement of the man's skin, then learning his identity. Henry suffered a sudden asthma attack. Couldn't make the trip. My thoughts fled back to Akale's newest message, to the mention of ultraviolet waves and telepathic communication. It isn't serious, and your visit should proceed just as planned. We'll set off as soon as you're ready. Open-mouthed and silent, I entered the car by which he stood. Why would you just get in? Brown could not have helped but sense my apprehension. We drove in silence. Finally, you can see the barn down there. I'll go in ahead of you, so as to let Henry know you're here. Don't take my demeanor or his illness as any predictor of his hospitality. He's been very eager to meet you, face to face. When we arrived at the farmhouse, I immediately exited the vehicle to stretch my legs after the long ride. Brown left the car running and went inside while I stood and surveyed the surroundings, breathing in the fresh air. One point of calming normalcy, despite everything else. He soon emerged, but only to return to his vehicle. He said his goodbyes to me through the open window. Sorry I can't stay any longer. I have important business elsewhere. Henry's waiting for you. But he's in bad shape today. His voice is gone, and when he has his attacks, he stays confined to his study with the lights out. I don't like that. You can go right inside. It's the room on the right of the front hall. And with that, he drove off to the north. I hadn't come far when my eye was caught by another footprint on the path, seemingly fresh and far deeper than the imprints left by my own feet. It looked utterly alien, yet unnervingly familiar from Akale's earlier photo. Those claws. Though it won't let us go off the path. As I passed by a balsam fir growing near the path, I paused to examine it more closely. As I feared, I noted bullet marks on its slender trunk. This seemed to confirm yet another aspect of Akale's story which I still prayed might be some complex fabrication. My sigh is not because I'm bored, it's because I'm nervous. When I reached the entrance, I noted a more subtle source of the pervasive unease which overwhelmed me. Since I arrived, I had heard not a single sound, save my own footsteps and the humming of Walter Brown's car. I knew Aquilay's dogs would be gone, but was there no livestock or wildlife? It was as if every living creature had vanished from the region. Somehow I pressed on. Chapter 7. I overcame my misgivings and entered the farmhouse. I found the door to which Brown had directed me, and took a breath before pushing it open. That appears to be a photo, that drawing there looks roughly like H.P. Lovecraft. Look at a photo of H.P. Lovecraft and tell me I'm wrong. The room seemed to emanate a bizarre odor, and I perceived a faint sense of vibration coming from within. Aquiles sat in a great armchair at the back of the room. He seemed even sicker than I had expected. His pale face held a strained, rigid expression. He greeted me in a faint whisper. "Professor Wilmarth, how marvelous to meet you for the first time, in person. I'm very ill, and I fear less than an able host. I'm sure I'll feel better tomorrow, but for now, I'm helplessly weak." I searched Aquiles' face for any hint of acknowledgement towards his hidden plea for help. He gave none, merely continuing with his welcome as if he had sent no such thing. "I set your dinner in the dining room, across the hall from here. Your bedroom is upstairs, just above this one. Make yourself at home and eat whenever you want. You might want to leave your laptop in here, where we will be discussing our emails, before you take your bag upstairs. Come back here for a little quiet visiting before night, and go to sleep when you please. I'll rest here, perhaps sleep here all night, as I often do. I hope you realize the stupendous nature of the opportunity we face. The gulfs of time, space, and knowledge beyond imagination will soon be opened to us. They have promised to take me to their home planet, Yugoth. Human astronomers have yet to discover Yugoth, for the Miko have exercised their influence to delay them from doing so. When the time comes that they desire us to know of it, their human followers within scientific circles will convey the necessary hints in the right places, until we at last find their great dark orb. There are magnificent cities on Yugoth, with towers built of black stone like the kind I tried to send to you. To visit Yugoth would drive any weak-minded person mad. But I am going there. You could too, Wilmarth. I was caught off guard by Aquiles' eagerness in discussing such dark cosmic infinities. Had he truly been convinced of the things he now told me? No, I decided. His mind had been violated. treacherously conditioned to believe them. I abandoned hope that he would put forward any plans for our escape. That much would fall to me. For now, I could only follow along and scope the place out, so I left my laptop in his study and went to eat my dinner. Then I moved my suitcase upstairs to my bedroom. This is the exit. What's in the other? Nothing. We have to go upstairs. Can I go back in the study? No. I just have to go upstairs. The whole time I couldn't help but think of Akale sitting motionless in his study. Trying the first door of the upper hall, I found it locked. This must have been Akale's bedroom. But what was hidden inside? Through the window, I watched a thick sheet of clouds slowly creeping across the sky. Something in that whisper, I have to admit, filled me with dislike for the sickly man. I was ashamed to feel this way, but I just wished he wouldn't speak such praises of Yugoth and its dark secrets. I soon rejoined him to continue our conversation. Well, Marth, it is time I showed you the incredible device the Migo hath given me. If you would turn your attention to the table by the door. The Migo have discovered a harmless method to extract a brain and preserve it in one of these canisters, made of metal from Yugoth. Meanwhile, the brain's host body lives on elsewhere. They give these disembodied brains sight, hearing, and speech through ingenious machines. They have given me one such machine and several brain canisters to experiment with. I would like you to speak with another human. To begin with, take the canister labeled B67 and place it in the machine. Professor Wilmarth, I hope I do not startle you. I am a human, just like you. My body now rests safely under vitalizing treatment inside Round Hill, about a mile from here. My brain is in that cylinder, and I see, hear, and speak through this machine. If those human words see and hear suffice to analogize the senses through which I now perceive the world. In a week, I will cross the void as I have many times, and I expect Akale will accompany me. I hope you will also travel with us. I know you by sight and reputation. I first met the Migo in the Himalayas, and since I became their ally, they have given me experiences few people will ever have. I have been to 37 different planets, Wilmarth, and all this has not harmed me in the least. My brain is virtually immortal in this canister, and my body never ages while I am outside of it. These visiting beings have methods which... oh shit. How do I go back? The rooms seem to emanate, so I had to go to the chapter select, because there is no back button on this, which is unusual for visual novel. Usually there's like an option to go back a selection, because I accidentally clicked and I missed dialogue. I was trying to dramatically read this. So give me just a second while I skip to where we were. I'll have to walk up the stairs again. I do think this is really great art, though. Just really great presentation. I wish there would just have been an implementation of a back button. So we're roughly at the spot where, okay. So I'll go back to reading in character now. These visiting beings have methods which make the procedure easy and almost normal. It would be crude to call the operation surgery. The visitors are eager to know ones of knowledge such as yourself, and show them the great abysses of the universe. So I hope you will join us in our adventures. There is nothing to fear, but I will leave the matter up to you. Good night, Professor Wellmarth, and treat our guest well, Mr. Accolay. If you don't mind, I think this will be the end of tonight's conversation. I wish to rest now, but we must continue our discussions in the morning. I was glad to be out of that study with the strange odor and vague suggestions of vibration, yet could not escape a hideous sense of dread and peril as I thought of my situation. The wild, lonely region, the black, mysteriously forested slope towering so close behind the house, the footprints in the road, the sick, motionless whisperer in the dark, the hellish cylinders and machines. Above all, the invitations to strange surgery and stranger voyagings. These things sapped my will and almost undermined my physical strength. One thing was certain. I would not spend another night here. I felt nothing now but fear and loathing, and a wish to escape this morbid place. Sleep would be impossible, I knew. I turned out the lights and fell into bed, fully dressed. Not a sound came from below, and I imagined my host sitting there with cadaverous stiffness in the dark. Chapter 8. I can't remember how long my unexpected lapse into slumber lasted, and cannot prove the events that came next were not purely delusional. You may believe it was all a dream. To the moment when I rushed out of the house, stumbled to the shed where I had seen the old Ford, and seized the ancient vehicle for a mad race over the haunted hills, arriving at last in the village of Townsend. When my frantic story sent a police unit out to the farmhouse, Accolay was gone, without a trace. The dogs and livestock were indeed missing, and there were some curious bullet holes on the exterior of the house, and some walls within. There were no metal canisters or machines, no laptop, no odor or vibrations, no footprints in the road, and none of the terrible objects I glimpsed in the very end. I stayed a week in Brattleboro after my escape, inquiring among people of every kind who had known Accolay. The results convinced me that the matter is no mere figment of my imagination. Accolay's purchases of dogs, ammunition, and chemicals, even the cutting of his telephone wires, are all matters of record. The Accolay house was now avoided by everyone but the post deliverer and a few brave adventurers. I learned that Round Hill was notoriously haunted, but I could find no one who had closely explored it. Occasional disappearances of natives to the region were well attested, including Walter Brown, since the day I last saw him driving off. There are very disturbing sounds in the mix of this that are really freaking me out. When I left Brattleboro, I resolved never to go back to Vermont, for I know that loathsome outside influences must be lurking there in the half-unknown hills, and that those influences have spies and emissaries in our world. To keep as far from them as possible is all that I ask of life in the future. Despite my efforts to forget it all and regain mental stability, certain questions continue relentlessly to plague my subconscious mind. Was it really your father who wrote that final email, begging me to rescue him? Was there ever a chance of saving his life? In light of everything else, my own escape still unsettles me. Why, in their incomprehensible alien genius, did they allow me to survive my visit to the farm uncaptured? Yet the fear of which I can never rid myself is of the things I watched Akale tell me about the planet Yugoth, of the artificial progress by which the Migo might lead our scientists to find that extraterrestrial hell, that researchers of Caltech, your own university, have now theorized the existence of a ninth planet in our own solar system should be a grave warning to you. I do not believe this planet to be the Yugoth of which I learned through horrible whispers. Current calculations propose it to be of gaseous composition, yet its presence proves there may still be unknown celestial bodies in our galaxy. I now pay special attention to advances in the field of astronomy. However small, they fill my lungs with dread each time. But I still have to tell the ending of that terrible night in the farmhouse. As I said, I finally dropped into a troubled doze, filled with terrible dreams of monstrous landscapes. I awoke to noises in the hall outside my door. Thankfully, the noises quickly ceased, and the footsteps went away. I could swear I also heard quiet, receding laughter. Later, I heard voices from the study below. There seemed to be several speakers engaged in argument.
Brought it on myself. Sent the messages in the stone. Seeing and hearing. Damn you. Impersonal force, after all. Fresh, shining cylinder. Good God. Time we stopped small and human brain saying, harmless, peace, couple of weeks, theatrical. No reason, original plan, effects, return soon, round hill, fresh cylinder. Well, alone for now.
Something in the fragmentary discourse chilled me immeasurably, raised the most grotesque and horrible doubts, made me wish I might wake up and prove it all a dream. I must talk to Akale at once, I thought, and convince him to leave with me. They had brainwashed him with their promises of cosmic revelations, but now he must listen to reason. We would escape before it was too late. Oh God. Can I look out the window? Not a hint of moonlight showed through the cover of dark clouds. I half tiptoed from my room, gripping my pocket flashlight in my right hand. I dared not disturb the door to Akalei's bedroom, assuming he'd remained downstairs, and that something else might lurk within. I wished to heaven I had quietly left the place before allowing the light to fall on the vacant chair in Akalei's study. Resting on the chair, I saw 3 objects which the investigators did not find when they came later on. I hope devoutly that they were the waxen products of a master artist, despite what my innermost fears tell me. Great God! That whisperer in darkness with its morbid odor and vibrations. So is this like the kitchen? Is that what this room is? For the things in the chair. Oh no, this is the study, I think. Perfect to the last, subtle detail of microscopic resemblance or identity. Oh my God. Were the face and hands of Henry Wentworth Akalei. I'm sorry. So I thought that was excellent. I've never played a visual novel quite like that. The sound design and musical score, Mark Sparling, whoever you are, you did a great job. It says it's written and designed by Nathaniel Nelson, who also did the ASCII art and the programming. This was just excellent. I really liked that. I liked it for what it was. I did kind of read it intentionally a little slow, like very dramatically, because I'm presenting it. Obviously, you'd probably read that a little bit faster if you were to play it. So that is available for $3. I think that's very worth it. I would have paid $3 for that. I would even do that again, read that again at some point. Yeah, Nat Quayle Nelson is the Itch.io page. They have a couple games that came prior. I think that's how Itch.io does it. I think they put the earlier ones and it just kind of like goes up like that. Whisper in Darkness here. I want to follow them. And maybe at some point, sometime in the future, once I have exhausted what I can record and show in Itch.io's Racial Justice and Equality bundle, I can come back to some of these people and see what they've made. Yeah, I just really liked that. It should also be noted that Itch.io also sells novels. They also sell novels. They sell comics. They sell zines, which has fiction and essays in them. They're like digital versions of a magazine. So Itch.io is not just games, and it's not even just visual novels. It straight up, you can just sell novels on it. So that was, again, The Whisper in Darkness. I thought that was wonderful. I had a great time. So there we go. Next week I'll be playing a more gamey game. For me it'll be tomorrow, but for you it's next week. I'll be playing some more gamey games. I don't know how many I'll post next week, but it all just depends on. I don't know how long these games are when I start them, so it really just depends on what just happens to be next. So see you next week.